right. Shlomi, a beer so we can actually start. Hello, everybody, and welcome to JFrog. It's so good to have you here. It's like a conference, but much better because we have beer and we actually go home instead of some crappy hotel, right? Meetups rock. Yeah, right. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Docker container lifecycles, and the picture that I have here in my opening slide, it's kind of a teaser to the last slide of this presentation. So whoever knows, just know, all the rest, trig. So I'm a developer advocate here with JFrog, and as you probably all developers can recognize the pattern, I'm J Baruch on the internet. Developer advocate, for whoever not familiar with, that's the job description. This is what Shlomi told me when he hired me. I hang out with the cool guys, and then I talk about it in various locations and ways. It's a hard job. Cheers, guys. JFrog, your host. Oh, that was cheers. JFrog is a startup company started in Israel, and thank you very much. Started in Israel and now has headquarters right here in this wall, actually, right? And we have a very nice new office in France. And today, as you already probably all heard, we raised $1 million. Cheers again. We have a little bit of obsession with frogs, as you might notice everywhere. Did you take the stickers? Good. And we have 3 products. Artifactory, which is a universal artifact repository, Bintray, which is a universal distribution hub, and Mission Control, which is the universal mission control for Artifactory and Bintray. And today we are going to talk about Artifactory mainly. Let's start with Paul. So Docker is hot, and my question is, who heard about Docker? All right. Who can do the Docker tutorial? You can leave your hands up. Who is playing with Docker, BIOS, concept in this? Who is taking it to production? Okay, we started with all the hands up, and we finished with, like, I can count on one hand, right? And the question is why? There are probably many reasons. Everyone has its own, but I would say that what we hear a lot from the users and the customers is this, right? Everybody loves Docker, but we don't trust it very much. And it comes on from various sources, this lack of trust. And one of them, again, as from what we see, is that people cannot be really sure what runs inside the Docker container that they have on production. And this is very scary, because if you try to take it to production and you don't really sure what's running up there, that's not a good sign. Right? Without it, it's simpler. We have the transparency. We have the trust in what we put there is actually. With Docker, it's too much layers of abstraction and too much magic, right? Do you agree with me on this feeling? So what we are going to talk about today is continuous integrity. Building the trust that what we actually wanted to put in the container ended up running on the production and not something else. Why we are talking about it? Why JFrog? If you ask me what frog does to the well, I won't answer. So why JFrog? Why we are talking about Docker and why I'm standing here today and talk about Docker. We do stuff with Docker a lot, especially when it comes to Docker registry, actually managing of Docker images. Artifactory as a Docker registry comes with high availability, comes with proven powerful security model, comes with integration with enterprise systems, and we actually did the support for Docker images before there was Docker registry. This is a screenshot from a Docker Con US back on, I think, October last year. This is, of course, Solomon Hykes, the creator of Docker, asking the audience who is using Docker and nothing else. And we will do the same here. So who is Docker and nothing else? Right. 1,000 people, DockerCon, no hands raised. And that's for a reason, because Docker is a containerization or something technology, which means that it's a packaging, it's a container, and no one cares about empty containers. Docker always comes with something. And Artifactory is a tool that not only supports Docker, but supports almost everything, every major technology that you build your software with, that you put inside a container, actually can be built with Artifactory. So you have one tool for both whatever you need and the way you pack it, the way you ship it. Right, and another nice feature, for example, browsing for Docker images. Doesn't look very complicated, but we have it and other solutions don't. Multiple repositories, that's another trivial thing for us, and this is something that we are going to talk about today, and again, it doesn't present in any solutions. So let's talk about those multiple repositories and why we actually need them. And we start with something looks completely unrelated, and that's the promotion pyramid. You probably know this picture. We're talking about taking the builds or the outcome of the builds through the promotion pyramid to the production. And this promotion pyramid actually says that when we have a lot of builds, we run a lot of very fast tests on a lot of binaries. The binaries that survive, the builds that survive, promoted to the next level. We run harder and slower tests on less binaries. It takes less time, or the same time because the tests are longer, but we have less builds, etc., all the way to the production. This is a promotion pyramid, something not invented now, not invented here, and not invented by us, and you're probably all familiar with it. And when we are talking about promotion between those stages, actually something like that. And that's all, again, not a picture that should strike you as something new. This is the promotion pipeline. Those are quality gates. Quality gates are passed when those tests that I mentioned earlier actually passed. Right? And we build our software here, and then we promote it by testing in each and every step. Right? Another thing which is different in those repositories is the visibility. So the developers probably see everything. The QA guys see only the QA repository. The early adopters, beta tester partners, whatever, see the release candidate repository, and everyone can see the production repository. Right? So visibility is different as well. And this is not new at all. And in order to get to how we tackle it with Docker, let's talk for a minute about how we tackle it with a normal software development. So we have the development team, and what they do, they write code. And when they write code, they use their dependency management or build tool to add new dependencies and to run the builds. They do it on the local machine to verify that everything works. And let's say I'll take the example Java, probably most of you know. Good. Maven, like, okay. So we have this Maven build, we have this POM XML, we add new dependency to commands lang, and then we run the build to check that it actually works. Maven will fetch to the outside world to the external repository to resolve the dependency, it will be Artifactory, and Artifactory will proxy JCenter or even the legacy Maven Central if dependency is needed. We'll cache it in Artifactory and then return it back to the developer. Now, the local build passed, and the developer will commit the changes to the version control, and now it's where the CI server kicks in. The CI server kicks in, take the changes, and run the same build, the exact same build. The exact same build will need the exact same repositories, which will be brought from Artifactory, and this time we can be sure that the dependencies are found because they are already cached. And here is the interesting part. After the build, the artifacts are getting deployed to Artifactory naturally, but we have something else. And this is what we call the build info bill of materials. This is metadata which was collected during the build in the CI server and in the build tool. This is a critical metadata because it has the information about how your product was created. Sounds important to me. And it's not available in any other time from any other place. If we here, it is lost forever, right? So this is the bill of materials, and we will talk about it in the context of Docker as well. And then this pipeline that I showed you earlier kicks in. Those are different tests that run on different phases. It can be the UI test with Selenium, stress test with Gatling, or whatever, doesn't matter. The manual QA, all those contribute additional data as well. So the Selenium test may say this artifact works in Chrome and Firefox and doesn't work in Explorer. Well, that's default setting will be. And the stress test might say it holds 10,000 requests per second, but not 100,000, or doesn't matter, right? All this metadata is also contributed to Artifactory, and now we have all this metadata here. And this is the promotion. The promotion is based on this metadata. That's the ultimate step. That's the deployment to production, but it's the same for the all the staging repositories and promoting across the repositories as well. They use this metadata that were collected from the build itself and from additional steps in the promotion pipeline to decide where to go to each environment and to each server. And if we are talking about deploying to production servers, that can be in-house hosted servers or cloud services, but we are talking about the deployment process. It will use deployment tools like Chef and Puppet, Ansible, or whatever, and they will provision the software to the servers. If we are talking about distribution of software, which means downloadable software, software that can be downloaded by humans, by machines, by Internet of Things devices, whatever, then whatever we selected to go to production actually rolled out on the distribution platform, on the download center. One of the options that, of course, we suggest will be a Bintray as your distribution hub, but it can be whatever file server that you use for that. So again, this is not new. This is something that we in JFrog do for a decade, and probably you might be familiar with it in one way or another. So what about Docker? Well, one of the interesting things and the powerful things and the thing that we love about Docker is the build and the Docker build command, because it's extremely powerful and it's extremely easy, right? Everybody can create an amazing image in a bunch of Docker file lines. When we have something powerful and easy, our natural desire is do this. And then what we end up is a very interesting flavor of the promotion pipeline. When we actually run Docker build in each and every environment, we create an image here, we taste it, and then we just can throw it away, because creating a new one here is very easy. And creating another one here, it's very easy as well. You just run Docker build and it works, which is awesome. And this is what we have. The problem with this is that fast and cheap builds aren't always the way to go. This is Shanghai, China. And this is probably was a fast and cheap build process. And yeah, and this is why. The problem with Dockerfile is that in a very high degree of probability, every single time you run Docker build command, you will end up with slightly different image. Because usually it depends on some dependency, implicit or explicit, in every single line, and most of them are usually the latest version of this dependency. So every time you run Docker build, in your development, in your QA, in your staging, in your pre-production, and in your production, there is a very high chance the outcome will be different. And that's exactly give us the feeling that we cannot really be sure that what we build in our development machine and what will end up on the production machine will be the same. Which is insane, because the whole idea of Docker is to ensure that whatever you build on your development machine will end up on your production machine. Yes. Do you have in the cloud? It doesn't matter where you run Docker build, this is going to happen, right? So you might have been lucky in getting the same artifacts as long as none of those dependencies changed, but you know, Murphy is always there lurking for us. You know what? Let's fix it. This is actually only one way to run the Docker file. We can do that. We can actually nail down the dependency. Is it any better now? No. Why not? Thank you very much, Jay. So this is a man that Docker should pay him a lot of money for his suffer. Because of that, this guy actually have, I would say, a couple of hundreds different flavors of the same image under the same version because of security patches. All the users of this version of Ubuntu to get this nasty patch to this nasty bug, which is a good thing, but again, we lose this guarantee that what we build on the developer machine ends up on the production machine. Sometimes it's good, but it definitely shouldn't be uncontrolled. And this is what it is. Now, what about those ones? We can nail the versions here too, right? And each line here, well, most of them use the same. Both of them use apt-get, but they might use different things. We might build here something with GCC, and then it will bring in more dependencies, which will probably be latest version or version ranges, or we have no idea what. Not only we have explicit dependencies that we have the power to log in, we have tons of implicit dependencies that we actually cannot control or even not aware of them. And with Docker, it's pretty easy. We can do that. We can use the fingerprint of the image as a version. Now, this is rock solid. This is good. It's unmaintainable. It's unreadable. We have no idea if this is actually a newer version of the one that we had last week or older version of the last that we have last week. But this at least guarantees that we get the same. But again, as I already mentioned, I jumped a slide ahead. All those are more or less implicit, explicit dependencies, mix of dependency managers that are completely out of our control. Right? Think about it. You know what? Maybe I should add to this slide running a Groovy script. And this Groovy script might have a grape annotation in it, which is a built-in dependency manager based on Ant that goes to JCenter and grabs artifacts from it. But this is yet another level of dependency management that you had no idea about. Who knew about grapes? That's my point, right? That's the idea. So This is what we all should do. When we build promotion pipelines, whether it's Docker or any other promotion pipeline, we have to do it with immutable and stable binaries. So instead of building Docker build on each and every level, on each and every step, we should build only once and then promote the pre-built binaries across. That's the way to do it. And the question is, how can we do it with Docker, right? So we have a promotion pipelines built into Artifactory. This is how it looks like. So we have some build, and it was promoted 3 times, from staging to pre-production and then to release. Right? This is a build browser. That's the promotion history of a build, which is very nice and works extremely well for all the development tools. But what about Docker? Why Docker is different? For many reasons. One of them is runtime limitations. Something like that. So there are some limitation, which is just invented, and now we're stuck to it. And what I mean is the Docker tag. Again, you're all familiar with Docker. You all know this structure. So when you have a tag of an image, you call it by the registry host it came from or it goes to, and then the name and the version. And this is a big deal, because we are talking about those repositories that we build promotion pipeline on, but then the tag limits us to one registry, to one repository per host. How can we even build promotion pipeline if we cannot have multiple repositories on the same host, right? So that's kind of a limitation, which wasn't forced by anything, but it's just that. So what can we do? Of course, the most natural thing to do is this. But we can also use something else. And I'm talking about virtual repositories in Artifactory. This is a feature that exists forever. Yoav is here to correct me. It's from Artifactory 1.0, which is like, what, 12 years old now? Something about that. It has been forever. And what it does, it actually does exactly what we need. It unifies different repositories behind it for a single URL. And that's exactly how we can solve this trump-up limitation of having one registry per host. So what we did is we minimized the number of repositories Docker can interact with. Now, we still need to promote the images. So we still need to have multiple repositories, but they can be on a backend. And we can deploy to virtual, which is backed by a development repository, promote within Artifactory by REST API or by using the CI plugins, Jenkins plugin, or what's not, and then let the user resolve from virtual repository, which is backed up by a production or whatever environment we are targeting to. So what we are going to have is something like that. So this is a developer that builds a whole new image, and it will resolve from the virtual repository, because this is what this is how he can work with Docker. And then this development virtual will be able to access everything: the development repository, the production repository, and the images on Docker Hub. Everything is enabled because this guy actually creates the image. So they need everything. And then once the image is ready and Jenkins build the build, then we have the deploy. And the deploy goes to the development environment. This is the beginning of the pipeline. And now we promote it inside Artifactory through repositories. And if you need to take this image in every of those stages and deploy it on an environment to test it, or run a container out of it to test it. You can point different Docker clients to any of those repositories to get those images, but eventually you promote within Artifactory. And then you have the customer that resolves, or user that resolves from virtual repository, which is only backed up by production. This user won't be able to access the dev, won't be able to access the Docker Hub, or will be, if you decide that it's a good thing to do. I think it's a bad thing to do, but you might think otherwise. You might allow your user to get the official images and whatever you put in production, or you can say the only thing that you can see is whatever we put in production, and we will use Docker Hub in the first step to get the base image, right? It's up to you. But anyhow, this is the way to solve this strange pain that came out of nowhere. Is it enough? It's not enough. And it's not enough because the URL of Artifactory or any artifact repository is actually built more complex than just hostname, because it usually has the context name of Artifactory and then the repo name. We have one repo, but we should put it somewhere. So the question is how we translate this, which is the real URL. So we have our host and then our port, context name, virtual repository that we mentioned, and then a tag name. How can we convert it to be that? Docker tag, this is the command, and then we need to provide a host port and the tag name. And the answer will be, of course, tools like that know how to rewrite URL. It can be Apache, it can be Nginx, it can be whatever tool that can convert one URL to another. Artifactory comes with a built-in support for generating the config of Nginx that will let you do that. So you say, for a Docker virtual repository, I want to generate an Nginx config that will map it to a certain port here or to a certain virtual host here. And then it's actually very easy to overcome this additional problem that comes from the same source. And the question that I hear a lot in this stage is, but we have this registry mirror flag. It probably should solve this problem because a registry mirror actually can nail down the resolution to a certain registry. So it's actually solved the problem of the tag name. Well, registry mirror instructs Docker to ignore the host and the tag. It will always go to another host. But, or if you don't have anything in the tag, it will still go to your host instead of the Docker Hub. But it's still a single URL, right? So it doesn't solve the problem of having multiple repositories. And it's set per Docker client. It's actually per Docker daemon, but from the perspective of Artifactory, it's from one Docker client. So not so much, doesn't have much. Another topic that I want to speak about is the promotion metadata. And I already mentioned the importance of metadata that being contributed from the process of creation of the, but also from the process of promotion. And here we can think about what to be promoted, which build or which artifact need to be promoted, where from and where to, and of course metadata as well. The status, what we have to say, how it was promoted, was it successful, or is it a rollback for an unsuccessful build, and who is doing it. That's also kind of important for tracking back and firing the guy. The comments that we want to put, and here it can be like free text or this metadata about the state of the artifact. Now it even works in the Internet Explorer out of the saddle, right? And any other custom metadata, right? So, and the Artifactory have, again, the facilities to do that. So we have our promotion REST API, and it's actually get a JSON that you can provide all this information about. Last thing that I want to talk about is that we don't really know how you do the promotion. And that's okay. Your mileage might vary, and you might decide that you do your promotion pipelines and your promotion commands in a totally different way. For example, during the promotion, you want to send an about a certain build, which now promoted from QA to staging, or from staging to pre-production. That's a big deal. You want to issue an email. And this is something which cannot be expressed in this JSON file. So it would be nice that you could actually write the code that happens during the promotion. And we allow it with the user plugins that serve as a callback for different events in Artifactory. And there are tons of events that we respond with this callback, like artifact download, artifact upload, artifact deletion, whatever, but also promotion. So you can put your piece of information, your piece of code, your logic that will be called during the promotion, right? And I'm pretty sure no other document registry can do that. This is how it looks like. We have a callback that gets the build name, the build number, and additional parameters. You do whatever you like there, and then you say, okay, it's promoted, right? So this is very easy. The one message that I want to end up with is the importance of automation. And the fact that you here, instead of drinking beer in any other place, you drink it here is because it's free, but it's also because you probably understand the importance of automation of the promotion pipelines. And it is a big deal. And when someone tells you, you know what, let's do it manually for now, don't do it. So this is it. And now back to slide 1. The picture that you saw is a picture of a winery in which we host our annual user conference. And the theme of giving away free booze actually goes big time there, because it is in Napa, right? So it's actually very fascinating event in a winery in Napa. 2 days this year. One day is actually a conference, and we have announced, and the other is drinking. Almost the night is from drinking. We announced a dozen of featured speakers. They are on the site, guys from Netflix and from Google and from Yahoo, and from all over the place. The second day is actually a factory training, very intensive one. Feel free to register to it as well. swampup.jfrog.com. Early bird, good prices for unlimited booze, basically. And one more thing, we are hiring like crazy, and now we have money to pay starting today. For all those, we have money to pay, right? And those are great technical positions that if you know someone who is qualified, we will be more than happy to convert him to a real frog. Thank you very much. And now for the fun part.